Este episodio está en inglés con subtítulos en español. Voy a estar publicando también un episodio traducido con tecnología AI a español, así que si no quieren escucharlo en inglés y quieren escucharlo en español, vayan al siguiente episodio. Hello everyone, I'm Debbie Mohnblatt and welcome to a new episode of Etzlila en el Medio Oriente, the program in which we will learn about the complex Middle East in simple terms. Today, we have the honor to have here with us Yasmine Mohammed, a human rights activist, writer, and founder of the organization Free Hearts, Free Minds, which provides psychological support for ex-Muslims. Yasmine is also the author of Unveiled, a book in which she tells the story of her life. And we will hear a bit about it today. Yasmine, welcome. It's really an honor to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Debbie. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Before we start digging into your life story, can you tell us in just one sentence why did you choose the word unveiled as the title to your book?
Yeah, I felt it was giving two definitions at the same time, like a double entendre. And first of all, unveiled, removing the hijab, and then also unveiling the truth about this religion and the people who live under it, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of lies and propaganda. And so I wanted to unveil all of these lies and to tell you what it's really like to be born and raised as a Muslim.
I'd love to start from the very beginning. Can you tell us where were you born and a little bit about your childhood?
Sure. So I was born in Vancouver, Canada. My mom is from Cairo, Egypt, and my father is from Gaza. They met in Egypt when Gaza was under the Egyptian Authority, and my father went to university there. That's where he met my mom. And then they moved to San Francisco in the United States, and they lived there for a few years. And then they moved to Canada, where I was born. And shortly thereafter, their marriage fell apart. So my mom was looking for community, looking for support, and she went looking to the local mosque, not because she was religious, but just because she was looking for community, maybe people who speak Arabic, perhaps, other women that she can connect with. But there she found an Egyptian man who was already married, already had a wife who was a Canadian convert, in fact, and 3 children. And he was part of this new ideology that was brewing at this time. This is early 80s. So there's a lot of talk about, Sayyid Qutb, Hassan al-Banna, Muslim Brotherhood, all of this stuff was just starting to be, it was like really popular. And he was very much into all of that. And he pulled my mother into it. And she agreed to be his second concurrent wife, even though it's against the law in Canada. But in Islam, a man can marry up to 4 wives at the same time. And put hijab on her, put hijab on me and my sister, started forcing us to read Quran and to pray 5 times a day. Suddenly, everything was forbidden. No more birthdays, no more riding your bike, no more swimming, no more having non-Muslim friends. This was really difficult for me because I'm in Canada. All my best friends are non-Muslim. And it's really transformed our lives in a very negative way. He would take my mom's records and he would break them. And he would tell us music is from the devil. And my mom did nothing to resist him. In fact, she became so enamored by this ideology. And a big part of it is this ideology is very, very anti-West. And my mom blamed the West for the destruction of her marriage. So she believed that the reason why her marriage fell apart was because they moved to America. And just like Sayyid Qutb and all of the others in this ideology of Islamists, they hate the West. They hate America. And so she really connected with that. And then the pro-Islam stuff is like mixed in there. She accepted that just as much as the anti-West. And so she became so involved in this ideology that she started going to Al-Azhar University. She got her master's degree in Sharia and Islamic studies. She became the head of the Islamic studies department at our Islamic school. It just kept on getting more and more and more and more fundamentalist, more and more religious, more and more extremist. And while she was doing this, of course, I was resisting the whole time. I was unhappy. I was hoping that she would snap out of it. We would go back to our old lives, but that never happened. And then eventually, I'm skipping a lot of things from my book here. A lot of things happened, but fast forward, I'm 19, and my mom forced me into marriage with an Al-Qaeda terrorist who was in Canada to support the 9/11 terrorist activities. And she felt like she finally found a man who was, she said this, her quote, strong enough to control you. And so I was married to him for a few years, everything you can imagine being married to a terrorist. And it was all religiously acceptable. It was all religiously ordained. He's allowed to beat me. He's allowed to rape me. He's allowed to do whatever he wants to me because I'm his property. And who am I going to complain to? Allah said this is sanctioned. So there's no other authority more than Allah that I can complain to. And it wasn't until I had my daughter that I realized I can't live this life. I can't let her live the same life that I had lived. And so that is what finally gave me the courage to get myself and my daughter out of that world. And again, it was very difficult, but I'm grateful that I was able to do that. And finally, years later, write my book and share my story. And here I am today.
Yasmine, how old were you when your mother remarried?
I was about 5 or 6 years old.
And until then, you grew up as a secular?
Yes. Yeah.
And how was for you to enter a fundamentalist Muslim house all of a sudden?
It was like a bomb fell in my life. It was destruction. Everything was destroyed. Everything that made me excited about life. You can imagine when you're 5 or 6 years old, the joys are very universal, I think. You know, I used to ride a bike that was 3 wheels. And I was so excited that I was going to get my sister's old bike and that I learned how to ride a bike with 2 wheels. So this was my whole, focus. I couldn't wait until I could learn to ride a 2-wheeler. And then they came and they said, no more riding bikes because you're going to lose your virginity. You're going to break your hymen and then no man is going to want to marry you. I'm 5 years old. I don't know what they're talking. I still don't know what they're talking about because all of that is nonsense. But as a child, it's like, this is crazy. Like, this is the thing I'm looking forward to so much. And now you're telling me because of this religion that I can't do it anymore. Swimming. I learned how to swim underwater. I was excited I was going to learn how to swim above water too. Nope, no more swimming lessons because you're showing your skin and you're going to entice men to rape you. And so you have to cover up, so you're not allowed to wear a swimming suit anymore. Like everything that was exciting for me, all of the joys I was looking forward to. In Canada and America at that time, the big deal was to have your birthday at McDonald's. And I was really excited about having my birthday and hopefully at McDonald's one day. I don't remember ever having a birthday party with my friends. Because before the age of 5, you're usually just family and things. But to invite your friends, to have the little card and to have a party, I never had that. It was taken away from me. And my friends were so important. Friends are important to you when you're a child. We used to play Barbies all the time. We lived in an apartment building, and I would just walk down the hallway on the same floor. And the best friends, Chelsea and Lindsay, were living there. And we had a plastic suitcase that carries all of the Barbie clothes, the Barbie shoes, and we would go to each other's apartments and we would play. Sometimes we would sit in the hallway and we would play Barbies. Suddenly, no, you can't have non-Muslim friends. You can't play with them anymore. And they would come knocking on my door every day after school. Can Yasmine come and play? Can Yasmine come and play? Always, no, she's busy. No, she's busy. So, it's hard for me to convey to you how all-encompassingly horrible it was. So that's just the things that were taken away, But then the additions were also horrible. The additions were now you have to memorize Quran. You have to memorize these strange words. I just was not fluent in Arabic, especially not Quranic Arabic. I had to learn how to read it. I had to learn how to write it. I had to learn how to pronounce it. And if I didn't memorize, I would get beaten very badly. And then we had to pray 5 times a day. The first prayer is before the sun comes up, and the last prayer is after the sun goes down. So my childhood was always sleep deprived because I live in the north, right? Canada's up north, where sometimes, like in the summer, the sun doesn't set until close to 10 p.m. And I have to stay up so that I could do the last prayer after the sun goes down, and to get up every morning before the sun to pray. And then I have to stay up because I got to go to school. There's no time to sleep in between. You can't rest. And so it's like the things that were taken away from me were horrible and detrimental and sad and depressing. And the things that were given to me were the same, just as horrible, sad, depressing. And so there was it's like all of the joy was taken from my life. Music, anything that brings joy was forbidden, was haram.
And you mentioned that you showed resistance as a little girl. How did you show resistance?
I had a lot of internal resistance, but when you start going to Islamic schools and the hijab is put on you and you don't have any contact with the outside world, you give up. There's nothing you can do. What resistance other than internally feeling sick and sad and angry? There's nothing you can do. But I was very lucky because there was 1 year where the Islamic elementary school was built, but the Islamic high school was still not built. And so I had an opportunity to go to a public school for 1 year. And in that year, I confided to one of my teachers. I told him about what's happening at home. I told him about the beatings. I told him about the abuse. I told him about everything. And that teacher is Mr. Fabro. He wrote the foreword for my book. We're still in contact. So this man was just, like my savior, it felt like at that time. And he contacted the police. He contacted, the police contacted child services, and then child services. It became like this huge court case. And in the court case, after a long investigation, a long and very difficult investigation where I felt like it will be worth it. It will be worth all of this because I will get out. I will be free. And you can just imagine how it feels to be living in the house with the people that you are telling the police about, telling the government about, telling the judge about. It was just torture. The abuse was escalated. But I just felt like it's okay, I'm going to get out, And then the judge said to me, this is your culture, this is your family, this is how they choose to discipline you, this is your life, there's nothing I'm going to do to protect you. And so he threw me back into no hope, threw me back into the darkness of like, that's it, this is your life now. Who am I going to complain to? Who else am I going to go to for help? I'm 13 years old now. What kind of power do I have? And so my mom took me out of school, kept me in the house, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just abuse. And there's nobody to see me, nobody to hear me, nobody to talk to, nobody to interact with. It was just house arrest. So that was a very difficult, very, very difficult year of my life. So constant resistance like that, that's one of the stories, but I was always trying to resist. And every time I would resist, I would get broken down and flattened to the point of I would just be quiet for a few years because it was too much. I was not succeeding. And then after a few years, I would find the energy and the courage to try again. So when they forced me, when I graduated from high school, we went to Egypt as a family, like as a family vacation. And they just left me there. They got up in the morning, they quietly took the plane, went back home to Canada, and left me in Egypt. And my mother's twin was the one who was responsible for taking care of me and for marrying me off to my cousin. They were trying to marry me off to my cousin. So you can imagine another round of resistance, right? Another round of pushing past everybody in my family. And this is even more now because it's all my extended family in Egypt too. It's exhausting. And I kept doing this over and over and over and over again my whole life, to the point that when she brought the terrorists for me to marry, I was depleted. I was like, what can I do? How can this end? And I thought, if I just do what she wants me to do, if I marry the man she tells me to marry, if I wear the niqab head to toe in black, not even my eyes showing, like everything was covered. If I allow him to beat me, I allow him to rape me, I do everything that they tell me to do. I pray 5 times a day. I do everything. Cook for him, clean for him. Maybe she will finally stop hating me. I don't even need her to love me. I just need her to stop hating me. I need this resistance, this discomfort of my whole soul to finally be relieved. And so I did it. I did everything. And I completely disappeared. I had nothing in me to fight anymore. I was completely gone because what are you going to fight, right? I was finished until I had my daughter. When I had my daughter, it's like something divine from way outside of me. I don't know where it came from, but any parent listening to this will understand. You just get this feeling like, I will do anything to protect this child. I will do anything to make sure that this child feels safety and love and devotion and feels cherished. I will do anything to protect this baby. And then him and my mom were talking about taking her to Egypt to perform FGM on her. They wanted to take a razor blade and cut my beautiful, perfect little baby girl for no reason other than their religious delusions. And so I was like, when they tell the stories of like a mama bear, where you just, you get this energy from somewhere where you just want to protect your child. That's what came over me. There's no way I was going to let them do that to my daughter. And that's what pushed me to finally resist in a way that they couldn't bring me back. All my whole life was like, resist, pull me back, resist, pull me back, resist, pull me back. But when it was for my daughter, fuck all of them. Excuse my language. There was no pulling me back. There's no way they were going to bring my daughter into that world. And then 9/11 happened. And the way they had such joy, such pride, such excitement, such jubilation over the deaths of innocent people. They're laughing when they're watching people jumping from the World Trade Center towers. They think it's funny. How am I going to raise my daughter in that community? There's no way I'm going to have my daughter grow up to be such an inhuman monster. There's no way. There's no way that she's going to be raised in this environment. So that's why, because of my daughter, I was finally able to get myself out completely, to get her out completely.
Was your family part of a community with the same ideology, or was just this household?
It's the whole ummah. It's not the communities. You see, this is the fallacy that you get told, is that it's like little, everybody's different. So it's an ummah. Ummah means collective community of Muslims. The Muslims will always support each other above non-Muslims. It doesn't have to be rational. It doesn't even have to be moral. They will always support each other before they support non-Muslims. So even if there was a Muslim who in their heart was feeling disgusted or angry or upset over 9/11, they will shut their mouth because you are part of the ummah. And in my book, I describe it like a school of fish. You don't have the liberty to think for yourself, to feel for yourself, to express opinions for yourself. Absolutely not. You are part of this mob, you are part of this ummah, and you have to move with it the way it moves, You have to say and do the things that everybody does. And I'm sure there are Muslims who disagree with a lot of things that they see happening, but it's too dangerous for them to talk about it. It's too dangerous for them to push back. That not only within their family, within their community, within their societies, they will be ostracized. This is why there's honor violence and honor killings are so common, right? You can't do that. Even the smallest, slightest deviation, you are putting yourself in danger. So the way it's described to us, they show like a tightrope, like a tightrope in a circus. But below are the fires of hell. And you're told as a Muslim, you have to walk this tightrope. And if you slip, down to hell you go. So you're living under this constant fear, constant anxiety, constant stress, because it's not just Allah when you die, it's all of the ummah now that is watching you, and that you better make sure that you walk this straight line. Muslims will sometimes do things secretly, like they say, oh, well, I don't, like a gay Muslim, for example, outside, they'll be homophobic. Meanwhile, they have a same-sex partner, Outside, they'll be anti-Semitic. Meanwhile, in their homes, they're feeling like this is really cruel, So they won't speak out because it's too dangerous, regardless of what it is that Ummah is doing. So when 9/11 happens, when October 7th happens, when, Charlie Hebdo happens, when Samuel Paty happens, when Samuel Rushdie or Salman Rushdie happens, when anything like that happens where it's like the Ummah, where do you see the Muslims that are criticizing it, speaking out against it? If you're lucky, you'll find 2 or 3 of them brave enough to do that. And I guarantee you, those 2 or 3 are risking their lives. Guaranteed. Talk to them about it. You will see they've lost friends, they've lost family, they've received death threats, and they are fearing for their lives. So it's a very, very, very big price to pay to deviate from anything that the Ummah is doing as a collective.
Yasmine, you mentioned that your husband arrived into Canada to help with the operative of 9/11, with the attack. What role did he have on it?
So his name is Assam Marzouk. He was part of the Egyptian Islamic Jihad. He joined it when he was about 14, 15 years old. What they do to find boys to join is they find the ones who are not fitting in with their friend group, or not fitting in with their family, or not fitting in with their community. And so they find those boys. So what happened with him is that his father was an engineer, and his whole life they were living in like a village, And then his father made enough money and he got a good job, made enough money. They moved to a really nice apartment in the big city. Now, Egypt is very hierarchical. So the language, when you're living in the village, the language is different. Your clothes are different. The way you cut your hair is different. Everything about you, he didn't really fit in when they went to the big city. And he's a teenage boy and the other boys are making fun of him, and perfect for them to find and tell him, hey, do you want to be like the best of people? Do you want to follow the call from Allah to be like the highest levels of heaven, and et cetera, et cetera? So he fully accepted this ideology because, he's born and raised Muslim his whole life. So none of this is very foreign. It feels very pure. It feels very good. It feels very righteous. And so he joined, and then he told his family, I'm going to go, he told them I'm going to go study in Europe or in America or something, but then he ended up going to Afghanistan. And in Afghanistan, he was involved with bin Laden in the bombings of the American embassies in Africa in the 90s. And because he was a good soldier, bin Laden was going to use him for the 9/11 effort. And so he was given a fake Saudi Arabian passport, fake Saudi Arabian name. They put him in Saudi Arabian clothes. And from Afghanistan, he went to Canada. So this fake Saudi is coming to Canada with a fake passport, and he's actually Egyptian. This was a bunch of red flags. So of course he gets caught, he goes to prison. In prison, his bail is paid for by bin Laden. Bin Laden sends one of his other operatives from California, crosses the border, pays for Assam's bail, pays for his lawyer, the best lawyer we had in Vancouver at the time, and gets Assam out of prison and gets him refugee status. While he's in Canada, I didn't know this at the time, I learned this later. While he's in Canada, the FBI are monitoring him. Because you don't have a man come from Afghanistan with a fake Saudi Arabian passport. His bail is paid for by bin Laden. They know about the bombings in Africa of the American embassies, that Al-Qaeda was involved. So they're monitoring him. And the person who was monitoring him was another Egyptian man named Ahmed. Now there's a memo that was given to George W. Bush a few weeks before 9/11 happened. And in that memo, people were saying, oh, he knew about 9/11. He knew. He didn't know, but the memo gave some information about like a threat, a risk that was happening. And in that threat, they mentioned Ahmed and they mentioned this operative in Canada. What was happening at the exact same time, which I didn't talk about, was that I had a miscarriage. So when I realized, first of all, when I realized I was pregnant, I gave up. I said, that's it. I'm gonna go to Peshawar and I'm gonna be a jihadi wife. Like, I'm done. How am I gonna raise 2 children as a high school graduate? I give up. And then I found out that the baby didn't have a heartbeat. And when I found that out, it was like the most devastating news of my life, but also a blessing. Because I realized this is your chance. If you get pregnant again, you're going to give up again. So you better get out of here before you get pregnant again. And in Islam, a woman can't say no to her husband, right? So I just had to I had to get out of the house. So what I did was when I went for the D&C surgery, the nurses told me, you're going to need somebody to help you with your baby because you're going to do general anesthetic and you're going to be groggy. You're not going to be feeling well. So you need someone to help you with your baby. So I told him I need to go stay in my mom's house for a week because I need someone to help with the baby and I need to recover from this surgery that I just had. And he said, okay, go to your mother's. And I knew this was my only chance because I can get away from my mother's house a lot easier than I can get out of his house. And so when I went to my mom's house, I know her schedule. I know when she goes to the Islamic school because she's the head of the Islamic studies department there. She's very, like, I know her schedule because I went to that same Islamic school. And so I knew I had the window where I would go find a lawyer, and I did. I found a lawyer, full niqab, with my baby. She's like a toddler at the time. I find a lawyer and I ask her, can you give me full custody, restraining order, and a divorce? And you can't call me, you can't contact me because there's no cell phones now. She's not going to call my mother's apartment. So it was a very risky operation. This is happening at the same time as the pre 9/11, just a few weeks before. And so it was like 5 or 6 weeks when George W. Bush received the memo. When Assam received the divorce papers, he was so angry, but he also knew that his time in Canada was limited. This was not going to be safe for him because I'm the one who was going to get him Canadian citizenship. He's still a refugee. He's very, he doesn't have permanent residency. And so he decides then he's going to go find jihad somewhere else. And so he went to Bosnia. The FBI or the CIA actually were monitoring somebody else. And then Assam went into that guy's hotel room. He was just there. And then he was caught in this raid. And so when it took him, they sent him back to Egypt. And in Egypt, he was involved in like the largest court case around Islamic terrorism, which included a lot of terrorism happening in Malaysia and Bosnia, obviously 9/11, all that, al-Jihad, al-Qaeda. And he went to prison for 15 years hard labor. That's what he was sentenced with. And he was for, I guess, even more than 15 years. And then he was released for a short amount of time under Morsi, who was the Islamist president that we had in Egypt for a couple of years. So he released all the political prisoners. They're jihadis. He released them all because people think there's a big difference between political Muslim and a jihadi. The only difference is opportunity. That's it. They're just working in different strategies towards the same goal. And so he let all of his friends out of prison. Assam went to Malaysia and got himself arrested again in another terrorist plot, and then got to Egypt again. And I don't know if he's still alive or not, but that's his story.
And where did you go when you left?
Well, I stayed in my mom's house. I was too scared to leave my mom's house until CSIS, who are the Canadian Secret Service, Canadian CIA. They contacted me and they showed me a picture of us behind bars in Egypt. They knew it was the only picture that was going to make me feel safe enough to leave the house. He's literally behind bars. He's holding onto the bars. And they said, you're free. You can leave the house now. And so I immediately started applying for student loans, and I started going to university, moved out with my daughter, which of course is a very, very big deal because a girl doesn't live by herself. You either live with your father or you live with your husband, unless you're a whore. And so it was a big deal for me to say, I'm going to live by myself. I'm going to go to school. I'm, getting my daughter at daycare. I don't need anything from you. I'm doing this by myself. And then I just continued my education and then was able to eventually teach in the university and making enough money where I could be independent. And I just forgot about my old life. I just felt like I'm really doing all of the things to progress myself forward. So all of this stuff is in my path. But of course, it's carried in you, it's in your brain, it's in your nervous system, it's in your heart, it's in your bones, it's in your blood. I didn't know I was carrying it all with me. And one day I was watching an episode of Bill Maher, and he had two guests. He had Sam Harris and he had Ben Affleck. And Bill Maher and Sam Harris were talking about how in Egypt, currently in Egypt, if you leave Islam, you're not killed, but you're thrown in an insane asylum or you're thrown in prison. But in many other countries around the Muslim world, you're killed. And so they were asking Egyptians, do you think people who leave Islam should also be killed? And close to 90% of Egyptians said yes. So this was really a shocking moment for me to see two American men on mainstream television talking about people like me, who left Islam and whose families come from Egypt. I felt like I was being represented. I couldn't believe how my experience was important enough for these men to talk about. And then Ben Affleck shuts them down. He starts telling them that they're racist and, you know how it is, right? You're a racist, you're a bigot, you're Islamophobe, you're all that stuff. And so he shut down the conversation.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask you. Your book subtitle is How Western Liberals Empower Radical Islam. Why? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I did change after October 7th. I rewrote the title of my book and I added an extra chapter about October 7th. So it's updated and revised, and the title, I changed it slightly to be How the West Empowers Radical Muslims. Because I don't think it's just the liberals, it's the West in general, right and left and in between. And I changed it from radical Islam because there's no such thing as radical Islam. All of Islam is radical, but there's radical Muslims. There are Muslims that are more radicalized than others. That title or that subtitle was really to express this feeling of frustration of I'm living in the West and I'm trying to tell you, pay attention to what's going on around you, to pay attention to these people who they see as enemy. They see you as their enemy. And you see that as a sweet little, minority group that needs protecting. You're not recognizing the danger that you're in because you're so clueless. It's like a mixture of ignorance and narcissism that makes them think that they are immune to anything, to the infiltration of their governments and their schools and their media. And I was screaming into a dark chasm, nobody wants to hear me, for years. And then on October 8th, it's like, now everybody has the same perspective. Now you can also see. This is what I thought, I got letters from publishers who had told me they can't publish my book because it's alarmist. They wrote to me and they said, okay, now we understand what you were trying to say. Because they want to believe that the world is good and that people are good and people just want safe land that they can live on comfortably, and they want their children to be prosperous and go to school and have good hospitals. They are projecting their own beliefs and their own feelings onto others who are not like them. But they don't want to believe that there are people out there who are so fundamentally different than they are. I don't have the luxury of being confused because I was born and raised in that. And I know that very intimately and I understand it. But when you're trying to explain this to somebody who can't see it and who doesn't want to see it, it was a very difficult job. But after October 7th, it became even more difficult because while you can see the devastation around you, the bleeding of the Jewish community who are now dealing with the greatest atrocity since the Holocaust on their community, and simultaneously you're seeing celebrations, you're seeing Palestinian flags going up everywhere, you're hearing people screaming, gas the Jews, and people saying, I'm going to send you back to Poland. Professors of universities doing these things, supporting Iran, it's just mind-blowing. So it's like I found myself in this twilight zone where for so long I really believed that if I could just let them see, if they just knew how bad it was, they would get it. But then they saw how bad it was, and they still found a way to twist and contort and to support the people who want them dead. Like, you really think that they only want to kill Israelis? You don't think that they want to? They say death to America first before they say death to Israel. The difference between those kids in the Nova Festival and your children is proximity. That's the only difference. Opportunity. That's the only difference. Right? But they didn't want to see it. They didn't want to believe it. They didn't want to hear it. And so it's like the same thing all over again, except that now I have devoted so much more of my time and energy to being an ally to the Jewish community because I know what that feels like. I know that gaslighting. I know that feeling of somebody denying your trauma. I understand that. I understand that when you try to talk about what's happened to you and how you're feeling, what's happening to your family and to your community and to your soul, that you are the one who is gaslit. You are the one that is told you are the bad one. And that's not something I ever wanted anybody else in the world to ever feel. And so when I see so many people around the world feeling the same way that I have been feeling, it shatters my heart. And I want to do anything that I can to be an ally.
Yasmine, why do you think that the West behaves that way?
I wish I had an answer for you that was sufficient, but I really feel that it is suicidal empathy, which is a term that Gad Saad, a Canadian Jewish man from Lebanon, coined. Suicidal empathy. We have really been taught here in the West that only Western civilization is bad. Only white people are bad. Only white people have ever done anything wrong. Only Western civilization has ever done anything wrong. Everybody else you cannot criticize because that makes you a bad person. And so we've really reduced the human experience down to such a simplistic binary of good, bad, white, black. It removes all context, removes all history, removes all truth, and it just gives you this very simplistic binary. And we have been living in that binary for a very long time, where they said white people bad, and Jews now are white, right? We forgot about Hitler, we forgot about the Holocaust, now the Jews are white, and they're bad. Muslims are brown, and they're good. Anybody brown is good, anybody white is bad. And it was just like this oppressor versus oppressed, and, they just created this almost like a nursery rhyme. Like, it's so childish and so not connected to reality or truth or history, but it worked really well on social media. You can make short clips and people can accept it. It's very easy to see it, because it's so childish. And they also co-opted the American story. So here in America, we are very clear on the fact that the Europeans came to this land, the Native Americans already lived here, and we basically took over their country. And now the natives are really powerless. They took this story and they put it on Israel. And they said that's the same thing that happened over there. It's the opposite of what happened in Israel, right? It's not at all. That's not what happened. In fact, if you ask the Kurdish and the Yazidi and the Druze and all of the other minority groups throughout the Middle East, they are so proud of the Jewish people because they are the only ones that were able to resist the Muslims somehow and to get their homeland back again. So it's the opposite. They're calling the Israelis colonialists and they're calling Jews settlers, and It's the opposite. They're getting their country back. If you really are anti-colonialist, then you would support the Israelis. But they don't know this. They don't see this. They don't understand this. They don't care to understand this. It's too much effort. If you just wave a Palestinian flag, you're popular. You get lots of likes on social media. My friend was sharing with me. I have to share it with you because it's so crazy. It's called Strippers for Gaza. And you know the stripper heels? The heels are like big, clear heels. They have a Palestinian flag on the stripper's heels. And there's more. The stripper is actually a trans woman.
Wow.
So it's like,
What would happen to
there's no way they would survive. You're going through all of this, Strippers for Gaza. In Gaza, when they find out somebody is gay, they pat him on the back of the motorcycle and they drive through the streets until his body is completely disintegrated. That's what they do to that's what they do to gay people over there. And so the absolute mind-bending contortions that need to happen for them to find themselves supporting a group that wants them dead. Not just because they're gay, but because they are non-Muslim. There's so many, you know what I mean? Like, they even kill other Muslims. You think that they're not going to want you dead? It's shocking to me how not only are they supporting the people who hate them to the point that they want them dead, but they will also attack other people who are trying to have some sort of self-preservation. So it's, the term useful idiots is a really good one for these people. And we've seen it happen so much. Like, this isn't the first time. The Islamic regime of Iran wouldn't be in power today if it wasn't for these useful idiots. When they were fighting, the Islamic regime was fighting the Shah. Who were their allies? The leftists, the communists, the socialists, the progressives. They were all like in bed with the Islamic regime of Iran, because together we're going to fight the Shah. We're going to fight the monarchy. We're going to bring down this system. And they did it. And then what did the Muslims do? What did the Islamic regime of Iran do? They murdered, imprisoned, forced out all of the socialists and communists and progressives that helped them get to power. Because you are idiots who are no longer useful. When you were useful idiots, they worked with you. But now you're idiots who are no longer useful, so you can die. We see this over and over and over and over again. And when they're doing it here in the West, it's like they have practiced already. They're all, this is like, they're just repeating the same playbook exactly. And that is what makes it even more dangerous, because we're not experienced in this. We haven't practiced this. We don't know what's going on, but they know. They've done this before. And they knew they were successful before, and they'll be successful again. I hope not, but so far, unfortunately, everything that they have set up to do has succeeded.
Do you think that the term Islamophobia has been weaponized in the West?
So the term Islamophobia was, from the beginning, a propaganda term that was created so that it can sound like other progressive terms. So it can sound like xenophobia, homophobia. It makes leftist people immediately feel like, oh, this is a good thing. I want to support it. I want to attack anybody with this word. But you'll notice from the beginning, it is talking about being afraid of Islam. This is an ideology. This is not a people, right? Xenophobia, homophobia, this is people. Now, I'm not asking you to hate Muslims. I'm not asking you to fear Muslims, but you better fear Islam. You need to, it's not irrational. It is very rational for you to fear an ideology that preaches your death. And what they did with this term, Islamophobia, is like you said, they weaponized it. They gave it to all these useful idiots, and they said, go forth and shut down any criticism of Islam. To the point you can't even talk about FGM. You can't even talk about child marriage. You can't even talk about beating your wife. You can't even talk about raping your wife. Nothing. If it has to do with Islam, you shut your mouth. That's what happened with Bill Maher and Sam Harris on that episode. They're talking about people being killed because they have no freedom of religion. People being killed because they have no freedom of religion. And even that is not allowed. If you said from any other country in the world, any other people, any other community, they will kill you if you do not believe in the religion and they want you to believe it, everybody would be shocked, horrified, devastated. This is unacceptable. But when it's Muslims, you can't say anything. Because created this term, Islamophobia, and the useful idiots are all running around policing everybody so that you can't criticize anything. And what's very important about criticism, without criticism, nobody will progress. Without criticism, we're never going to get better. How did we get rid of any of the ills that we used to partake in society? Through criticism, through the brave people that said, this is wrong, we shouldn't do this. How it happens. If you're shutting down the people who are criticizing, you're fossilizing that religion. You're fossilizing the people under that religion, forcing them to live 1,400 years in the past. Say, no, you can't progress because we won't let you criticize your society. We won't let you criticize your religion. So they call themselves progressives and they're acting exactly counter to progressivism. They call themselves liberals. They're acting exactly the opposite of liberty. They're the ones who are, restricting free speech, free expression, and freedom of religion. They call themselves, feminists, and they're supporting a religion that is so misogynist and anti-woman. They call themselves, anti-racist, and look at how they are supporting the treatment of Jewish people and supporting anti-Semitism. They call themselves, allies of the Jewish community, and you're supporting a group who kills, who murders people for being gay. Like, none of it makes sense, but they're not even looking at that. They're not paying attention to that. All it can see is capitalism, Western civilization. They're bad. They were the ones that were, slaves. This one really bothers me because it was actually the British people who were the ones, and American people who were the ones to reverse slavery. While it was still rampant in the Arab world, it still is rampant in the Muslim world. But everything is contorted. It's just ignorance. It's just complete ignorance and narcissism, where they think that they're too big, they're too special, they're too smart, and so they don't have the humility to even be afraid of their enemies.
Yasmine, do you feel that sharing your story was eye-opening for this kind of people?
I hope so. I've been doing this for a long time. And, if I didn't feel like I was encouraging people to think differently and to planting the seeds of truth and hope and light and reaching people's hearts and minds, then I would have given up a long time ago. So, I can't say that the amount of effort that I put in is, I feel like, a lot more than the return on investment, but it's worth it to me. There's nothing else I want to, there's no better way for me to spend my energy and my life. There's the Jewish philosophy of tikkun olam, which is to heal the world. And I feel like I have, embodied that. I feel like feels like it's my mission now too. It's not an easy job, but the fact that I have brown skin, from an Arab family, grew up Muslim, wore niqab, was married to a terrorist, all of that stuff allows me a space in global conversation where I'm an authentic voice. So I can say the same thing as Sam Harris. I can say the same thing as you, Debbie. I can say the same thing as other people who they will shut you down. And they'll say, oh, that's just a white man. Oh, that's just a Jewish woman. But they can't do that with me. So to a certain extent, I feel like I'm compelled. People like me need to speak out. We need to be loud because it will force people to engage with what we are saying because they can't just shut down our immutable characteristics.
Yasmine, thank you so, so much for being here today, for sharing your story, for opening up. And really, it was a huge pleasure to speak to you today.
Pleasure was all mine. The honor was mine, Debbie. Thank you so much for having me.
Muchas gracias por escuchar. Espero que les haya gustado escuchar la historia de Yasmine. Y les recuerdo que tenemos el spin-off de esta semana que va a ser exclusivo para los miembros de la comunidad spin-off de Tzlil, que se pueden unir con el link abajo pagando $7 al mes. Y en este vamos a explicar algo muy interesante relacionado a la historia de Yasmine. Ella mencionó que su madre en los años 80 se empezó a involucrar en una ideología de Islam fundamentalista que estaba floreciendo, la ideología de Sayyid Qutb y de Hassan el-Banna y los hermanos musulmanes, y les voy a explicar en el spin-off qué es esta ideología y cómo floreció y cuándo floreció. Así que si quieren escuchar esa parte, vayan a la descripción del episodio, lleguen a la comunidad Tzlil, vayan a comunidad y espichen upgrade, y por solo $7 al mes van a recibir este spin-off y los de todas las semanas. También me van a poder hacer preguntas que yo voy a contestar cada semana. Así que espero que tengan una linda semana y nos vemos en la próxima.